Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Marcia Martin, the heart healer, and today we are going to get the angelic perspective on disease. And I am so excited to be able to share this with you because me, like everyone else that I seem to run into in the spiritual world, we were painting disease with a pretty broad brush. In other words, we kind of had the opinion that disease was a product of the way you were thinking or interacting with the world. And the angels gave me a much more detailed explanation because I ran into a situation in my own personal life with some people that are close to me interacting with disease that didn't make sense. And I thought, okay, if it's not making sense here in my personal life, then there's a great possibility it's not making sense for other people either. So I need to find out with angelic help what's really going on. And I'll tell you what prompted this is I have two people close to me that are dealing with rheumatic diseases. The rheumatic diseases are autoimmune diseases and they are usually considered genetic. So I was like, okay, one of the people that has rheumatoid arthritis tends to be a worrier, anxious, concerned with appearances, and just kind of going through life very tense. The other person who has the milder version, um, undifferentiated connective tissue disease, is really laid back, totally fine with who they are, and feeling confident and powerful. And they're the one that said to me, and really started me on this journey, they're the one that said to me, eh, everybody has to have a challenge. I guess this is mine. But I just couldn't understand how you could have a disease as a challenge if all disease was a product of the mind, or the way that we were looking at a problem, or the way that we were interacting with it. So, always when I can't understand something, I run off to the angelic realm and get help. Our helper today is Archangel Raphael. He is here with us. His name means God heals. And absolutely, God is the healer. But that doesn't mean that every person recovers from whatever it is that they're dealing with. So let's get started and really understand what's going on here. So, the first question we need to answer is all disease connected to a spiritual cause? And that is yes, absolutely. There is a spiritual cause or an energetic reason behind everything that happens because everything is energy. Is all disease caused by negative thoughts? Now, that one I would have said yes to. I have to revise that after spending a lot of time with the angelic realm this week. And is disease a past life punishment? Now, that was something that I could never agree with because, in my mind, I could not justify how a God that was all good and all loving would cause people to have or interact with a punishment like disease because they had made a mistake in another life when they may not have known any better. So that never really hit home for me. I was always just like, nah, I can't go with that one. However, um, is there a time when you are using the disease as a way to review a challenge from a past life or to bring it forward or to deal with it in another way? And that is very possible. So I'm going to give you three examples of different ways that people are interacting with a disease. I happen to know these three examples, and unfortunately, they're all male. And I'm saying unfortunately because I don't want to give you the idea that only men can get a disease or I'm male bashing for any reason. The examples I have happen to be men. So let's just leave it there and know that it wasn't on purpose, but these are just such perfect examples that I needed to use them. So, and something else fabulous happened today that I need to share with you. And that is, I get a text message from a gentleman who always sends me inspirational things every day. And in his message today, he sent me a quote from Norman Vincent Peale. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is such a perfect example of why we cannot broad brush anything. And this is not talking about disease, but just problems in general. And Norman Vincent Peale says, every problem has in it the seeds of its own solution. If you don't have any problems, you don't get any seeds. So I want you to not necessarily get excited when you have a challenge, but don't become discouraged because a problem has arrived at your door. Instead, immediately begin looking for the seeds. What are you going to get out of this interaction? So let's go back now to looking at disease with that idea in mind. You're always planting seeds of greatness of how you can move forward. So let's look more deeply is disease connected to a spiritual cause? Well, we said yes because everything is connected. However, we can't just take that brush and say, okay, well, you caused it because of this or that or whatever. Instead, let's break disease down into three different types. First of all, there's disease that represents your life purpose. Then, disease that represents a life challenge. And finally, disease that represents life consequences. So the first one, the life purpose, would be a pre birth agreement. And for this example, I'm going to use someone I've heard about and haven't met. So I can't give you specifics. But in this particular instance, you would have to choose to interact with the disease because it would promote soul growth, and understanding of what it's like to have this particular disease or this particular limitation. Or perhaps you are wanting to bring the cure forward and you would bring with you the intelligence and the interest in studying this disease. Or perhaps it is something that you are wanting to overcome either personally, for your family, or for your culture. Now, when we choose the family of origin that we're going to be born in, we do so because we think this particular choice will give us the greatest opportunity to grow. Well, we don't grow when things are going perfectly. So our choice is based on, oh, I'm going to meet up with these different kinds of challenges and these growth opportunities. And so don't worry that you may feel, gosh, I've chosen a family in which I don't connect well with, or I've chosen a family that seems to have a lot of issues, or any of the other, or I can't relate culturally to the belief system in my family. It's okay. It's not that something is wrong with you. It's just you've chosen this to be almost like the sand in the oyster that is creating a pearl. Let yourself develop beyond it. So, disease makes an unavoidable statement. And that's something we know. If you have chosen to come into this life with some sort of what we would call a birth defect, so something that would be with you from the womb, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy are just two that come to mind. But it is a lifelong challenge that you are going to have to deal with and learn how to navigate around. It's not, oh, I have a cold and I need to learn how to be a nice person while I'm not feeling well. These are much more impactful choices that we have made. They are not punishment. And it might allow you to call attention to a particular problem. And an example of that may be inbreeding. Perhaps you're choosing to be born into a family that has a lot of intermarriage, and there are problems coming as a result of that. And you've chosen to draw attention to that by agreeing to be in that situation. But let's assume that your life purpose is to find a cure. And the gentleman that I'm going to share with you today, I have the utmost respect and admiration for because that's exactly what he chose to do. So, this young man chooses to be born into a family that is fairly well off and is able to get a very good education, has brought in an incredible intelligence, and quite an orientation toward the scientific. He's always doing experiments. He's really an interesting person in terms of the curiosity. And he develops quite an interest in science in the medical research side of science, and then ends up with stomach cancer. Now, when I first heard that story, I didn't have this understanding, and I thought, oh gosh, that's horrible. What a terrible way for this promising young man to end up having to deal with this. Then you hear the rest of the story. The rest of the story is he allowed himself, and the key word here is allowed. This was his life purpose. So he allowed himself to engage with this very rare form of stomach cancer. And because he was interested in doing medical research, he did research experiments on himself and moved the understanding and the uh, cure. I don't think they have found a cure yet, but advanced the medical community in by light years because he was able to do the experimentation on himself. And he said, I, as the only person that's being affected, give myself permission to experiment on myself. He didn't need FDA approval or anything else. And because he was able to do this very intensive, far reaching experimentation, he advanced that whole area of cancer research tremendously. The disease finally did help him to transition, but it wasn't before he was able to make serious headway in understanding that cancer and moving us closer and closer to really dynamic cure. I'm looking for the word, applicable procedures that could be done again and again to people who were not the researcher. You know, these we need with experimentation to be able to repeat it. So he kept meticulous notes and did absolutely fabulous research and then ended up moving the whole community ahead. Why? Because he had chosen this as a life purpose and agreed to interact with it personally so that he could do the work that he wanted to do. So that's when your disease could be a life purpose. Now, what about life challenge? Well, life challenge can be every life has a purpose, and that is the gift that you've brought to share. In the case of our cancer research scientist, his gift was to bring the intelligence, the absolute commitment, and the medical know how in order to understand this cancer. But we also are going to have chosen challenges, things that we want to interact with for the purpose of growth. So there are things that we may want to overcome, attitudes that have maybe caught us, stopped us in the past, caused us a limitation, defeated us, and we want a chance to overcome them in this lifetime. They can be personal, something that only you know about or want to interact with or overcome, or they can be familial or cultural. And this is where I think we are starting to get the understanding, oh, it's a family karma or a family curse. Let's get away from those kinds of words that talk about punishment, and let's see the people that are choosing to come in and interact with these issues as people who are quite um, courageous and wanting to show us a better way forward. So, for the life challenge, as I said, I also have a, an example of a young man, and this is the person who said to me, every life has to have a challenge. I guess this is mine. Now, why is it that his mindset is not creating this undifferentiated connective tissue disorder? Well, first of all, he chose to interact with a genetic. So he had to know that going in, there was a possibility that he was going to trip this sequence and interact in some form with this disease. However, he has the mildest form of this disease, and it is not progressing because he is choosing to say, what can I do? How can I support myself? What is it that I need to learn? How can I overcome, go beyond, or function well with whatever it is that I am needing to interact with so that I have the absolute best life possible? So he's not taking the road, oh, poor me, I have this terrible thing. Instead, he's taking the way of being of saying, okay, this exists. Now, what can I find that's great about my situation, and how can I make things even better? This is the attitude of an overcomer. This is the attitude that is always going to make you take whatever it is that you are having to interact with and make sure that you get the best possible outcome. So now we're going to look at, oh, and I forgot, I've got some more notes on Life Challenge. So let me just share those with you before we move on. Because Life Challenge can be for the purpose of finding a cure. Um, but it's always going to present an obstacle. It's going to challenge you. It's going to be your attitude and your choices are going to contribute to either moving quickly through it or really getting stuck like glue to this particular challenge. But it also would have been chosen pre birth. You have to have some sort of agreement. So, another example of this, not a male this time, would be Helen Keller. She came in able to see and hear and then contracted, I think it was scarlet fever, and lost both her hearing and her sight and became one of the most inspirational, fabulous leaders of that day, still inspiring us. So, life challenge doesn't mean that there are going to be limitations on what's possible. Life challenge just means you're going to have to find a way to either overcome or work around whatever it is that you've chosen to interact with. Helen Keller wasn't able to restore her sight or her hearing, but she found a workaround. The other person that I'm telling you that has the undifferentiated connective tissue disorder may not be able to find a cure, but they are finding other workarounds and they are continuing to feel good about their life, about what they're achieving, about their day. And because of that, the disease is not moving in the progression that it generally is said to move in. So that's if you're dealing with a life challenged. But what about this other disease, which I think is what most people are talking about in the spiritual community when they say, well, it's your thoughts that brought this about. Now, we could argue and say, okay, well, if you made a pre-birth decision, it's your thoughts. Yes, but I'm going to hold a hard line here and say when we are in that pre-birth conference, when we are choosing what it is that we want to interact with, we're in that beautiful place of bliss where there is no challenge, where there is instant manifestation, and where we are cocooned in the love of the divine. And I believe sometimes we may overfill our plate with challenges because we are not um, interacting with any difficulty in the pre-birth, the heavenly energetic state. So if you look at somebody who seems to be really dealing with a whole lot of challenges in their life, you might want to be a little more gentle and say, gosh, they really didn't quite realize how impactful these choices were going to be. Now, if you find somebody who has had a pretty easy life, but just loves to be negative, wants to look at everything that's wrong, loves to be critical, loves to be condemning to other people, and just likes to pick, you may find that as a result of those thoughts, that way of being, that kind of interaction with others, that they end up with disease as a life consequence. Now, this one is very different from the others. The other two were programmed in because there was something within the structure that was wanting to be encountered. They wanted to learn something from it. With a life consequence, you may not realize what you are doing. So, if you are a highly critical person, perhaps of yourself, or you are holding on, stuffing down emotions, or you are just so quick to point out what's wrong, you are constantly asking yourself to deal with the negative energies. When you are looking at the cure that you may be finding for a very rare type of stomach disease, you are, even though you are dealing with dis-ease, you are putting yourself in that higher vibration. But when you are looking at all that's wrong, you are engaging now with the lower energetic side of the scale. So now you might have some life consequences because you are causing yourself through your thoughts and your actions to interact with these negative things. So it's not a part of the original blueprint, whereas life purpose and life challenge can be, I would say life purpose has to be. life challenge probably would be as well. It's not part of the original blueprint, but every blueprint you create has a myriad of possibilities. We never just say, okay, my life is going to go like this. We say, oh, okay, I'm going to engage with this and this and this. And there are all sorts of different ways that can open up. There are all sorts of endings that I can experience depending on how I choose to interact with what it is that I am exposed to. So, the life consequence can be avoided if your thoughts are changed. Now, Abraham Hicks says it best because they say there will be times when you can absolutely turn that ship around and you do not have to experience the consequence of your thoughts. That is only true when you have not spent years and a lot of your emotional currency investing in the what's wrong. If too much time has been spent in the what's wrong, what's coming next, all of the bad, the critical and the condemnation, if most of your attention is focused in that direction, it's going to be really difficult to swing that around in time for you not to engage with some sort of consequence. Obviously, if you swing it around quickly enough, you will minimize the consequence that you experience. But boy, if you're going like a freight train, a locomotive, a high speed train, even down negative alley, it's pretty hard to believe that you're going to be able to stop, turn it around, and begin reversing that damage without experiencing some consequences. So that's why I'm saying it can be avoided because it's probably that you created it. It is usually directly related to your thoughts, and the lesson may not be learned. Now, this feels harsh, but hey, we have multiple chances to get it right. We are going to learn some things and just sail through that lesson. Other things, it might take us many, many lifetimes to really comprehend what it is that we're doing. So it's okay if somebody doesn't learn it. It's okay if it doesn't even look like they've made any progress. It's in alignment with their highest good. So don't worry. Often, the person that's experiencing disease as a consequence identifies as a victim. They do not see themselves as a creator or capable of creating something that they do want. They just see themselves sort of as the receiver, and they receive whatever it is that happens to be on its way to them, and then complain about whatever it is they received. So they would see themselves as powerless. And they are often reliant on help from the outside for relief, for answers, for a cure. They're not going to be doing much of the work. If they got that stomach cancer, they wouldn't do the research. They would just assume it's somebody else's problem to figure out. So here is an example, and this is a tough one because as I said, I know this person. This is an example of somebody who gave themselves a life consequence in the form of a disease. And I'm just remembering a conversation I had with another woman who said she spent probably 10 to 15 years in an unhappy marriage, stuffing down her unhappiness, and managed to interact with cancer. Now, that's one example. Another example is someone who spent all of their life saying, I don't have to treat my body well. I do everything wrong to my body and I still have perfect health. I just get away with everything. And at the same time, that person was very, very critical of other people, had a very superior attitude. I'm better than everybody else, and wasn't afraid to tell everyone that they were much better than myself or whomever it was they were talking to. And they didn't have a whole lot of respect for other people's intelligence. They always saw themselves as more intelligent than anyone else in the room. Well, unfortunately, now this person is dealing with lymphoma. This is cancer of the lymph nodes. Now, if you are familiar with the body, you know that your lymph nodes are spread throughout your body. So, all of these years of being condemning and critical, of being disrespectful to the body and all other people, of feeling like they knew better and nobody else was really quite as important as they were, means that they have really destroyed this vessel. It's no longer capable of supporting them in the way that it used to, because it was never given any kind of love and care, nor was any kind of love and care sent outward. So the energy that they were engaging with pretty much all of the time was a sort of destructive energy. They thought that they were getting one over on everyone, but that is really energy that's stuck in the negative register. And so it just quietly worked its way under the surface until it ate away at the whole lymph system. So let's be careful when we are looking at disease to be respectful of the body, to honor the body, to treat ourselves with love and kindness. And then don't judge other people who are working through any kind of dis-ease or discomfort. You could be the gentleman that had stomach cancer and was able to move that research and the medical field around that around that cancer ahead light years. You could be experiencing a challenge and learning how to maintain your sense of peace and tranquility and your um, your inner well-being, despite the fact that your body is not working in its perfect state of harmony. Or you could have spent your lifetime being critical of others and all other things, doing the least amount you could to help others and trying to get the most amount of credit. And then your body, which is all energy, may begin rebelling against you, because that is such a crime against yourself and really against society. And it speaks volumes about what you still need to learn about the spiritual world. So, just to review, life purpose is a disease that is necessary for the discovery in order to move the medical community ahead, because this person was able to experiment on himself. And this condition was not present at birth. So he had all the time he needed in order to get his education, to really develop his interest, to have this fascination. And then, whoa, now I have my own research subject, which just happens to be me. The life challenge. The disease can become the obstacle that you want to overcome. And as I mentioned, Helen Keller is a wonderful example of someone who went on to live a life of tremendous inspiration. So it's life in spite of the disability. And it creates for the person who takes on that challenge a real spirit of overcoming. They go from not from the perspective of what can't I do, but more from the perspective of let's make this work. What am I able to do from where I am? The life consequence, they look at the dis-ease perhaps as a punishment. Um, but it would be look at this terrible thing that God is doing to me. They would not take responsibility for interacting with the disease, or they would look at other people who are having a difficulty and they would say, look what that person is doing. They must deserve it. And they would also kind of hold that pity party attitude. In addition, checking my time, in addition, they've brought the disease forth from their choices. So they did not bring the disease in with them as a life purpose or a life challenge. It manifested because of the way they had chosen to live their life and the way they are interacting with themselves, with others, with challenges. And they're usually the type that it's always somebody else's fault. I would be fine if you just hadn't done this and this and this and this. And they will, and this particular disease will respond to a change in attitude. Now, again, if you have been practicing pity party and blaming others for 50 years and you end up with cancer, it may take a considerable amount of work on your part to turn the train around with changing your attitude in order for your body to respond. Everything is energetic, so it's going to happen first in the spiritual. It will then seep into your emotional and mental bodies and finally be expressed in the physical. So even if you have changed your mind and suddenly you're positive and you're taking responsibility and you see everything that's right and you are uplifting and inspirational, it may take a while for the physical body to respond, and it may be too late. The disease may have progressed too far. So let's remember too, because another touchy subject is, oh, I prayed for Mary and she didn't get well, but I prayed for Sue and she did get well. Is Sue a better person than Mary? No. Disease and purpose and challenge and consequence are individual. Your prayer is going to help Mary and Sue in some way, but unless you know what is for their highest good, then you don't know what is the best outcome for them. Perhaps Mary's best outcome is to no longer be in this physical body. That perhaps is what Mary desires most and what is in alignment with her highest good. And perhaps Sue, who did recover, is in alignment with recovery, and that would bring her the highest good for her life. Don't judge based on the limited amount of knowledge. If till you can get the wisdom of the divine, the truth is we just don't know why some people recover and some don't. All we know is that when you choose to transition, it is in alignment with your highest good. No one is taken too early. No one stays here too long. You go when you are ready, when you are in agreement, and when it is the best thing for your good. So some people are going to get well. Some people are going to transition into a new state. Always, it's going to be the right thing for them. And that's what we need to remember. Now, before we have to go, I want to take a quick look. Did I go over all these notes? Wait a minute. I lost my place, guys. Where's my Archangel Raphael notes? Oh, shoot. I tell you guys, sometimes it's fun to be me. Why do I do these things? Oh, here we go. All right, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to tell you that I thought was just fascinating. Oh, with the life consequence, there's not going to be any genetic component. So it's not like, oh, I dodged a bullet because I had the genetic components for a rheumatic disease and I didn't get it. That's not true with a life consequence. A life consequence you bring to your door. So there's no genetic component, there's no birth defect with it, there's no hereditary dispensation for it. It comes as a result of your thoughts, emotions, and actions. And that's why that one in particular may respond more quickly or more easily to a change in attitude. The others, as I said, might be coming to you because of what they are bringing. And if you were to cure it, you would miss out on the seed, the gift, whatever it might be. So, not every disease is neatly in a category. Let's just be open minded and remember that the severity, the medical advances, the superstitions that you may be able to lay to waste, the purpose of the interaction, and the cure all depend on why you have chosen to interact with this particular thing. So, a better attitude, a positive outlook, taking responsibility for where you are always going to give you a better quality of life. But I don't want you to be able or be afraid to say, ouch. If you are encountering something that doesn't feel good, don't stuff it in. Acknowledge it. Look at it. Oh, this is not what I thought I wanted. Once you get that out, once you can get past the painful part, you'll be much more able to look for the seeds, for the solution. But as long as you keep trying to pretend it's not hurting, it may become almost impossible. But at the same time, wallowing in disappointment is just going to make you feel powerless, dependent, helpless, angry, resentful, all sorts of nasty things. So acknowledge what is and then move on as quickly as you can into the space of what can I do? What can be accomplished from this place? The longer you spend saying, ouch, 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 the less time you're spending in the place where there are answers. However, you cannot just discount the need to say ouch, because if you stuff it down, it's coming up eventually. Just like the woman who I shared with you earlier who said, yeah, I had to have an experience with, and I think it's breast cancer, because for the whatever time she spent in that marriage, she stuffed all of the pain deep down inside. I'm stronger than this. I don't need to acknowledge this. This isn't really happening, until there was a volcano. So just remember that self-pity ensnares. It's going to give that disease a stranglehold. Responsibility gives you freedom and choices. Now, my favorite, or one of my favorites, Archangel Raphael, is God. His name means God heals. He is God's overseer of all healing. It does not mean that Archangel Raphael is not with you, doesn't like you, hasn't heard your prayer, isn't interested in answering your prayer if you don't recover. These are never synonymous. You are always loved. You are always safe. The condition may be existing for a completely different reason. And if you were to take the condition away, you would miss whatever it was that you were wanting to understand. So, Archangel Raphael is on the green ray. And for those of you who don't know, green is also the heart chakra color, the energetic heart chakra, energetic heart space. And I just find that so beautiful because this is where our connection to God is. It's through this energetic heart space, which is green, and healing is green. So if you're ever confused whether God, the divine, the creator, source, whatever you want to call it, if you are ever confused whether or not the will of source is to provide healing, the fact that Archangel Raphael, who is God's healer, is on the green ray, and green is the color of the heart chakra, should lay that question to rest. It's not, does God want you to be healed? The question really is, what is for your highest good? So know that you are capable of receiving everything that's for your highest good. Open your heart, shamelessly receive. Know that you are worthy. You don't need to make excuses for why you're good enough to receive. Just open that heart and receive. And then allow your highest good to come forth from that place. If it doesn't result in a cure, you will get some other benefit. But the disease is serving a different purpose. But no matter what, when you open yourself up to interact fully with that green ray and the energetic heart space that is green, you're going to get tremendous, fabulous, wonderful benefit. So just open yourself up. Archangel Raphael is a wonderful, loving, warm presence, very powerful. And I often see him wrap people in cloaks of that green. To me is sort of an emerald green, but the rich emerald green. And so he will often come and wrap the people in cloaks of this. The material feels almost like silk, and it will be cool or hot, whatever you need. It will weigh a lot or only a little, whatever you need. And it will go right to the area and help you to feel some relief. Just be open to the fact that being cured is not always the answer, and it's certainly not the only answer. All right, my beautiful ones, thank you all for being here. I invite you, as always, to join our mailing list, to join our community. Within the community, there are many different healing tools and techniques presented by Archangel Raphael. One of my favorites is the 3 rays of healing. But there are so many ways and so many tools that involve the angelic realm, and they are so giving. So that community is just overflowing with information that will help you live your best life. So until next time, thank you so much for being here. Oh, and there was one more thing I forgot. He was telling me, you forgot the most important part. One of the ways in which Archangel Raphael works with us is he, like Archangel Michael, carries a sword, and he brings miracles by cutting through the illusion of disharmony. Now, just as the word dis-ease is not being in a state of ease, disharmony is not being in a state of harmony. So, just like Archangel Michael, they are releasing you, giving you a breakthrough or a breakaway from the situation that may be aggravating you, causing you to be ill or not feel well. Call on these angelic helpers. They are magnificent. Now, Archangel Raphael is associated with spring and the evening wind. So if you're taking a walk at night and there's a beautiful breeze, just know that Archangel Raphael is present. And now I gotta go because I have an appointment with some wonderful people. And if you are wanting also to receive help from the angels and you feel that you need guidance, there is counseling available. Don't be shy. Ask, join, be part of this really incredible community that is designed to help you heal by uplifting you, not degrading you or diminishing you in any way. You already are more than enough. You just need to see yourself as the beautiful being that you are. So, for real this time, I gotta go. Thanks for being here, everybody. Sending you lots of love.